Hello, good afternoon. This is Transfer Talk. Just 2 days to go in the January transfer window. And today, we've seen a flurry of activity as the deadline fast approaches. West Ham are trying to offload 3 players. Will that allow David Moyes to bring in replacements? There is a new signing at Crystal Palace as Roy Hodgson brings in defensive reinforcements. We're going to be live to Brazil this hour for the very latest. And time is running out for Al-Shabaab to get a deal done for Newcastle's Miguel Almiron. Yeah, a very good afternoon to you at home and to Dan Bardell, Olivia Bazaglo and to James Zavundra as well, all smiling at me.
Oh, yeah.
In good spirits
Happy
for today's
to be here.
show. Yeah, good. Right, we're going to get to West Ham, but first off, we're going to get out and about and head straight to Chelsea. Our reporter Gary Cottrell is going to be speaking to Maurizio Pochettino a little bit later this afternoon. Gary, bring us up to speed, because no news on outgoings yet, but so much chat around Breuer, around Chalobah, around Conor Gallagher as well. They all seem a little bit unclear with a couple of days to go.
Yeah, well, the key to those 3, of course, is the homegrown status of all 3 of them. If a club has spent a lot, which, of course, we know the current regime at Chelsea have, brought money in as well, let's not forget. But if the regulators watching the financial dealings want to just keep a close eye on things, and Chelsea want to keep everybody happy about balancing the books, and there's no better way of raising money, of course, than selling players that you brought through the academy. The homegrown sale of players brings in 100% profit, and that's why those 3 names are being mentioned in the 1, 2, 3 days left before the end of the January transfer window. Conor Gallagher, of course, would be the most valuable, very popular player with Chelsea fans, with Maurizio Pochettino, an important player for him, sometimes captain as well, but his contract runs out at the end of next season, and so if they do want to cash in on him to help balance those books, then they would reluctantly, of course, listen to offers for an out-and-out sale, I think, with him. We know that Spurs and other clubs have shown an interest. We'll talk to Maurizio Pochettino about that as this clock starts to tick through to Thursday night. Probably he doesn't know yet what the situation is fully with him, with the chance still for people to meet the asking price that Chelsea would want for him, a decent, hefty price. It would have to be, for sure. With Breuer, a slightly different situation. I think the club would accept a loan with a commitment to buy, or, of course, an outright sale. He's played, 13 Premier League games this season, but hasn't played a full 90 minutes in the Premier League, scored a couple of goals. He's had injury issues, of course. Fulham and Wolves among the clubs who might be interested in him. So it would be, I think, less of a blow to Chelsea fans if he left. And then, of course, we've got Trevoh Chalobah, who's on that list of homegrown players as well. He hasn't played 1 minute this season because of injury, but he's coming back just at the right time. We may even hear from Maurizio Pochettino in this news conference in an hour or so that he is fit enough to be involved in the squad, either for Liverpool tomorrow or Wolves at the weekend. And so it would be a risk, though, wouldn't it, for a player who's been out all season, for somebody, and West Ham have been mentioned as having an interest in him, to take a risk at a time when he's just coming back to fitness. But you never know in the transfer window. We know that anything can happen.
Yeah, can't it just? Gary, you mentioned the phrase cash in a minute ago. If anybody does leave before that deadline on Thursday night, can we see any incomings at Chelsea?
Well, they still, of course, ideally, Maurizio Pochettino has said it, the club agree, want an out-and-out 20, 30 goals a season goal scorer. Although the need for that has eased a little bit since Christmas. They've scored 17 goals in all competitions since Christmas. And, of course, Nkunku, who's been out again after that long-term injury, kept him out for most of the season, is on the verge of a return again. We expect perhaps Maurizio Pochettino to say that he could be in the squad for that match tomorrow night at Anfield. I think their number 1 target, as we know, remains Victor Osimhen, but that won't be until the summer. There were suggestions perhaps of Karim Benzema coming back from Saudi Arabia to be involved in Chelsea's effort to score more goals, but I think the club now are looking away from bringing in expensive older players and concentrating on bringing in younger players with potential. Some of them, of course, proven, but not quite at the age of Karim Benzema. So I can't really see at the moment anyone coming in up front for Chelsea, but we love it, don't we? We just never know.
We don't at the moment. Gary, thanks for now. Right, let's go from West London to East London then. Let's get to West Ham now, where things are very much heating up ahead of Thursday's deadline. Let's start with outgoings. And James, it feels like there are, at the moment, a number of players who could leave over the next couple of days.
Yeah, 3 players in particular. Nottingham Forest, they're exploring a deal to sign Maxwell Cornet. So we understand Forest have approached West Ham about a loan move for Cornet, and it's thought that West Ham will actually look at suitable offers for a player who's only made 1 start in the Premier League this season. It was against Sheffield United where he actually scored as well, but things haven't worked out since he joined from Burnley in 2022. And they're also considering, West Ham are, a bid worth more than £15 million from Lyon for Saïd Benrahma. Marseille also understood to be interested in signing him. No goals, just 1 assist for West Ham in the Premier League this season. Sent off last week against Bristol City as well. It's not been hugely successful since he joined the club in 2021. Also, Pablo Fornals, who's been there since 2019, Real Betis in talks about a permanent deal, 18 months left in his contract. And this is interesting, signed in 2019 by Manuel Pellegrini, then the West Ham manager, currently the Real Betis manager. So that one's one that makes sense. So 3 players potentially on the move out of East London over the next few days.
Yeah, that's outgoings then. In terms of incomings, it feels like we've been speaking about Jota for a while. It feels like we've been speaking about Ibrahim Osman for a while as well.
Yeah, it still seems that West Ham are in negotiations to get that attacking wide player in, and maybe, as James said, if there's an outgoing, that might give them a little bit more room to manoeuvre in terms of getting the financial package right. West Ham have recruited really well over the last 6 months. You know, January already getting a player of Calvin Phillips' calibre in the summer, Kudus and Alvarez, targeting players that have played in Europe, played at the highest level, which is a sign of how West Ham are developing as a club, sat in the top 6 at the moment, won a European trophy last season as well. I feel like West Ham at the moment are operating in a real clever way. I think they're trying to take advantage of where they are, and they've suddenly become a really attractive proposition for players to join. A brilliant fan base as well, obviously, in London. So I think West Ham are in a really, really good place, and David Moyes has done a really, really good job there, in my opinion. Doesn't get the full credit that he deserves. There's always a lot of questions around him, and I get that the football isn't always what West Ham fans would want. But in the main, it's been winning football since he's been there. They finished 6th, 7th, won a European Cup. I mean, what more do West Ham fans want? So could be an exciting end to this January window for them if they can move players on and get younger, fresher talent that are more in line with where they're trying to go as a club.
Yeah, we heard Gary mention a minute ago West Ham's interest in Trevor Chalobah. We'll get onto the West Ham side of things in a minute, but from Chelsea's perspective, does this make sense?
I think so. I think he's got way more competition for places at Chelsea. When you look at Thiago Silva, even though he might leave next summer, you've got Disasi, who was almost brought in as a like-for-like replacement before Trevor Chalobah had even left. You've then got Badia Shiel, you've got Levi Colwill, who's been playing when he's played at centre-back has been really impressive. Fofana back from a long-term injury or is coming back as well. What I would say about him, I think he's a versatile player. You know, for David Moyes, he can play at right-back, centre-back, potentially even in midfield, albeit he hasn't played in midfield much for Chelsea. You know, he's fairly quick, he's physical, that physical aspect that we know those West Ham defenders have. So I think it would make sense for him as well, as a 24-year-old that wants to carry on, wants to get back playing regular first-team football. Now, Gary did actually mention his injury record. Of course, he has missed this whole season through injury, but actually, when you look back at the last 2 years, when he's made 63 appearances for Chelsea across the last 2 seasons, he missed no games last season, and then he missed only 7 the season before. So I don't think injuries are a huge issue for West Ham. Obviously, that's something to think about this season in terms of can he get back to the levels that he was playing at last season and the season before that. But I think as a Chelsea perspective, it probably does make sense just because of the strategy that we've seen the owners go with since they came in. And that is they like selling players for pure profit, and Trevor Chalobah would be that.
Right, we're going to get back and talk a little bit more about West Ham in a little bit. But let's go to Tottenham now, who acted really swiftly early on in the window. James Green is going to be speaking to Ange Postecoglou a little bit later on this afternoon. James, good to see you. A couple of signings in already, like I just said, done really early. Can we expect further incomings before Thursday's deadline?
Good afternoon to you, Emma. Look, you never know. There's still 2 days to go. Every single club we know will be working hard to see if they can bring someone in between now and Thursday night's deadline. And even after Thursday night's deadline, behind the scenes, all the clubs are working hard then looking at the summer transfer window. For Tottenham, as you mentioned, they got in early. Ange Postecoglou made it pretty clear from the off that he wanted a centre-back, and the club delivered Radu Dragosin in, so he was in. They knew that they were a little bit light in the forward line, particularly in January with Heung-min Son out at the Asia Cup. They brought in Timo Werner on loan. But now they're looking at younger talent. Now, we know they've been linked with Antonio Nusa. We understand about 10 days ago they started having talks with Club Brugge over the 18-year-old sign-in, but we know and we're seeing where that transfer's taken, and it looks like he might be joining Brentford, albeit a little bit of a hiccup this morning, so we'll have to wait and see whether that leaves the door open for Tottenham. But that young mould, that young talent, seems to be what Tottenham are looking at. And in the last hour, some of my colleagues at Sky have said that Tottenham are interested in Swedish sensation Lucas Bergvall of Djurgården. Now, he's just 17 years old. He made 25 appearances for the club last season, and we understand new Tottenham technical director Johan Lange has been crucial in pushing for this signature. So that might be one that excites Tottenham fans, maybe not right now, but in the future, that they're looking at bringing in these young talent, developing them here at Tottenham to push into the first team. So that's something that I think any football fans will listen to when their clubs are linked with young stars, that this is positive because they're looking further ahead than just what's happening right now. But for Tottenham, look, even if they don't get any more incomings, they know they've got Heung-min Son coming back from the Asia Cup. Papi Sow will be returning soon after Senegal lost out in the Africa Cup of Nations last night on penalties to the host Ivory Coast. So he'll be returning potentially for the weekend's game, certainly not for in time for Brentford tomorrow. They've also got Yves Bissouma coming back. We know James Maddison played 20 minutes against Manchester City on Friday. He's getting back to full fitness. The two centre-backs have both been out. They're back into the fold now. So they're getting that team back together that started the season off so well. So I would say the message is, let's wait and see what happens. But 2 days in football could be quite a long time.
It could be. And James, just lastly then, any exits at Tottenham? Obviously, there's been so much talk around Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. Is he definitely staying now?
Well, it seems that way, Emma. We heard Lars Holmgren, his lawyer, spoke to our colleagues at Sky Germany and reiterated his stance that the player is going nowhere. He said that the player has never stated that he wanted to leave Tottenham. He's happy at Tottenham, fighting for his place. He's happy with his football at the moment for Tottenham and on the international scene for Denmark. And this is a player that's actually featured in every single Premier League game, bar the season opener against Brentford. Now, I know he's not starting games, but he's coming off the bench. He's really providing an important role and a squad player role that Tottenham has certainly needed, and particularly in this January period where Papi Sarr and Yves Bissouma have been out. They had Rodrigo Bentancur out for a long period of time too, so they needed numbers in the middle of the park, and he's a player who, you know, whether he's up to the standard that now Tottenham are looking to move on from, that remains to be seen. But he's a player that will always give everything for the club, and he said and stated that he's willing to fight between now and the end of the season. So apart from him, that looks like that's not happening. We know that Eric Dyer's gone. We know Ashley Phillips gone out on loan. So they have moved around a few players in this window, but it looks like this is a pretty settled squad now going into the remaining part of the season.
Yeah, positive signs for Spurs. James, thank you. Right, some breaking news to bring you from Nottingham Forest now, and Lyon are in talks with them to sign their midfielder Aurel Mangala. Now, Mangala has been looked at by several clubs this month. Sky in Italy consistently reporting, you might remember throughout January, interest from Napoli. But as we know, we brought you the news earlier that Lyon are also chasing West Ham's Saïd Benrahma, but now they are showing some concrete interest as Forest, of course, just consider offers for a number of their players before the deadline. But breaking news coming out of Forest this lunchtime, Lyon in talks with them to sign their midfielder Aurel Mangala. Right, let's get back to West Ham then, because we didn't finish talking about Trevor Chalobah, because we talked about Chelsea's perspective. But for West Ham, I mean, Liv talked a minute ago about his physicality, versatility as well. Is that why they want him?
Well, I think it makes sense because West Ham are a defender down, having let Thilo Kehrer moved to Monaco earlier on this window, so there is a vacancy in that area. I think signing a wide forward would appear to be the priority for West Ham in this window, but you can see why West Ham would be interested in bringing Trevor Chalobah to East London if the price is right. Hasn't played at all this season due to injury. We can look at what he has done in his time so far at Chelsea. That's having made his senior debut for them in the Super Cup under Thomas Tuchel. He's played for Tuchel, Graham Potter and Frank Lampard, but particularly successful under Tuchel in this season here, 21-22 season. Part of a Chelsea defence where he kept 9 clean sheets in that time as well. We know the issues Chelsea had last season, but he was still an important player regardless of who the manager was. We see that for 25 games played in the Premier League. And whilst Chalobah has the ability to play as a full-back and a holding midfielder, which he actually did on loan at Ipswich a few years ago, his strongest position is at centre-back, either in a 2 or a 3-man defence. Here are West Ham's current options there. Aguerd, Zuma, they have been the preferred options used by David Moyes, but Mavropanos has started the last 4 Premier League matches, with Aguerd being ill, then away on African Cup of Nations duty. Angelo Bonga, 318 minutes, clearly a backup option, though he did help West Ham secure clean sheets his last 2 appearances, one of those against Arsenal at the Emirates. So based on that, signing a centre-back probably isn't an absolute priority. There's a question whether he'd be able to dislodge either Aguerd or Zuma. But we've seen the benefits that Fikayo Tomori, Mark Gay have seen from departing Chelsea after coming through the academy. So this move could work for him. It's just whether or not he'd be first choice if he was to move to East London.
Yeah, no, players have done well, haven't they? A quick line to bring you from Manchester United, and Granada are close to an agreement with United for the signing of Facundo Pellistri. The deal under discussion is a straight loan until the end of the season. We'll bring you more on that when we have it. But on the way, we're heading live to Brazil next to get the latest from South America. Hello, welcome back to Transfer Talk. We can go live now to Rio in Brazil and speak to South American football expert Tim Vickery. Tim, good to see you, as always. Let's start with Daniel Munoz, who is now a Crystal Palace player. £8.5 million from Genk. Is that good value for him?
I think it is. It's a very, very different deal from the one that Palace did in the summer, bringing in a young Brazilian, Matheus França. There, you're buying on promise, and he has to be bedded in. In the case of Daniel Munoz, 27 years old, he's already been in Europe for a little while, established. He's Colombia's first choice right back. He's got Jefferson Lerma there to help bed him in. So I think this is money well spent.
Just tell us a little bit about what he will offer Crystal Palace. Is he ready for the Premier League?
Well, it's going to be a step up for him, and especially defensively, I think. It's not the best part of his game. He can be caught off balance, and he may well pick up cards. What he is best at is being an attacking right back. There's a goal in him. There's a goal arriving at the far post. He's also very involved in the build-up. He can get crosses in. And looking at what Steve Parish is saying there at Palace today, they're obviously aware that they've bought an attacking right back. Now, Roy Hodgson hasn't always been at his most comfortable with attacking fullbacks, but at least Palace know what they're getting. This is a fullback with drive, determination, and attacking ability. Defensively, he might struggle a little bit.
Hi, Tim. You've been saying all window about Andre. You can't believe more teams aren't in for him. Time's running out now for him to get this move. Any chance of a Premier League move?
It seems to have all gone very quiet. I'm astonished with this one. And if you look at the stats in the Premier League, I think in the top 5 number of tackles won, you've got 2 Brazilians. You got Vinicius at Sheffield United, and you got João Gomes at Wolves. Now, Andre is probably the best of the bunch. And he's in the Brazil team. He reminds me very much of a young Javier Mascherano, tenacious in the tackle and good on the ball as well, and can cover space. It's astonishing for me that this player, he's now 22, that he's still in Brazil. And 22 you usually think of as being the cut-off point in the way that the market works now. And he's clearly not going to be in Brazilian football forever. But I'm very surprised that no Premier League club has come in with it. And Fulham have dabbled and Liverpool dabbled last summer. But I'm surprised that he's still in Brazil.
Tim, we know Premier League teams have been after a striker this whole window. Tell us about John Cordoba. I hope I've pronounced that right. Who's linked with him, and what would he offer those teams?
Well, a lot of teams have had a look at him, and Fulham have taken this one furthest. And who is he? He's a huge, physically imposing Colombian striker, 30 years old. He spent a decade in Europe, Spain, Germany and Russia. And therein lies the problem. Best football of his career has been played last 2 or 3 years in Germany and now with Krasnodar in Russia. Now, January transfer window is for desperados, isn't it? And lots of clubs, wrong end of the table, they're looking around for strikers. And Cordoba has become a consistent goal scorer who also gives you a physical platform to play off. But the problem would seem to be that he's in Russian football at the moment, and there are bureaucratic problems with Premier League clubs signing someone from Russia. So we will see in the last couple of days if a way can be found to work that one out. If not, then he won't be moving to the Premier League.
Tim, what have you made of the window so far in general? Unusually quiet, a lot of clubs dealing with PSR issues. Can you expect any late movement?
It has been quiet, hasn't it? And what we conspicuously haven't seen is the model of Nottingham Forest last year. You know, when they accumulating and seeing if you can find something there that's gonna keep you in the Premier League. We haven't seen anything like that, I think, for FPF reasons. But obviously, clubs at the bottom end of the table, they're always looking around thinking, who can get us a goal? Strikers are like gold dust. And so if we do get late movement, I think it will be clubs looking to bring in a striker.
And Tim, just very quickly before you go, tell us about the Under-23 Championships, which are well underway now.
Yes, this qualifies 2 teams for the Olympic Games, and there's some Premier League interest, especially in the Brazil captain, André Santos of Chelsea. A strange move that Chelsea bought him. They got more central midfielders than they know what to do with, and maybe even stranger that they loaned him out to Nottingham Forest who've got more players than they know what to do with. So he's now back at Chelsea. It looks like he's going to stay there for the rest of this season. And there really is a player there. There's nothing particularly flashy about Andre Santos, but he does the basics well, physically strong, works up and down, has got a good range of passing, has a goal in him as well, a surprise goal in him. So he's a player I think will be back when these championships end on February the 11th. He'll be back pushing for a place at Chelsea. Premier League interest from Brighton's new signing, the Argentine, Valentin Barco, who's a left-sided player. You can play him at left back, but he's very much an attacking left back. He's only played a couple of games so far for Argentina in the championships, but he can be a really, really thrilling sight, running with the ball, testing opposing defences. And for someone who's so small, so slight, he's got real power in the left foot. Interest from Wolves as well. Enzo Gonçalves, their Paraguayan winger, is out there. A little bit of a bit part player for Paraguay so far. We've been the surprise side. You wonder if he's quite quick enough for the Premier League, Enzo Gonçalves, but he's certainly got tight skills to offer and good from set pieces. So plenty of Premier League interest and plenty of players in action who I think we'll be talking about during the summer transfer window, which I expect to be much, much busier than this one.
Yeah, I think we all do. Tim, always a joy speaking to you. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll chat to you soon. My
pleasure. Thank you.
Right then, from Rio to Manchester. Up next, we're going to bring you Pep Guardiola's news conference live right here on Transfer Talk. Right, loads to get through. We're going to talk about Newcastle shortly and hear from Pep Guardiola ahead of Manchester City's game against Burnley tomorrow. But a few quick updates to bring you from the Scottish Premiership. Celtic have rejected an offer from Greek side Volos FC for James McCarthy. Now, the Super League side had wanted to take the midfielder on loan until the end of the season. You might remember as well, he hasn't actually featured for Celtic since October 2022. Also, another line to bring you from Scotland. It is our understanding that Hearts have made a second contract offer to captain Lawrence Shankland. Now, he was offered a new deal earlier this month. However, that wasn't accepted, and now new improved terms have been sent. Right, I promised you we were going to hear from Pep Guardiola. He is just about to sit down for his news conference, like I said, as Manchester City face Burnley tomorrow night. So let's listen to Pep here on Transfer Talk.
Hi, Pep. Can I ask about Erling Haaland's availability for this game? Is he fit to be available for it?
Yeah, apparently he will be selected, yeah. For the first time he's back, yeah.
How much of a boost is that for the club and the team to have Erling back then?
When we have all the squad, we are stronger, definitely. And Erling is an important player for us, definitely. I've been 2 months out, long time, but he feels good. And we have to train this afternoon, but apparently tomorrow will be, yeah, with all of us.
We've obviously seen with Kevin De Bruyne that you'd had to be very careful with managing his minutes in recent weeks. Will you have to do the same with Erling, or is this a different scenario?
One, it was muscular for the surgery, and he was stressed for the bone, so it's completely different approach. But, yeah, of course, step by step.
Can I ask about Vincent Kompany as well? I know you've spoken a lot about him in the past when you've faced Burnley, but what have you made of the season that he's had in the Premier League so far as a manager?
But I have a lot of respect for Bini and what he's doing. I know what he's trying to do. Sometimes the results going well or bad, but the team is alive. He played really good Aston Villa away against FA Cup against the Spurs, so the results are all tight, and we have to be careful. We are prepared as best as possible. The last training session before tomorrow.
Thank you.
Pep, could I just ask you about Kyle Walker and the interview that he gave?
No, I'm not going to talk about that.
Not at all?
Not at all.
Will it have any impact at all on whether he's captain of the team?
I'm support him and Annie and his family, and don't talk one word about personal issues for the players.
Will he remain your captain?
Absolutely, because decision for the team, not mine.
Just in terms of the way that your team is playing, and it seems to have got into some good form, is this the point in the season when you think you can really put some pressure on Arsenal and Liverpool and the teams that are going to battle?
It's one game at a time. Always when we made in the past a good run, is because we were thinking and our thoughts, it was just one game at a time. And it's just Burnley. The rest, I don't care. What we have done in the past is what the most important news, like in Bury the Light, is the fact that we are almost all the squad fit. I would say we don't have injuries. Manu is back. Yesterday training really well. Didn't fail problems about his knee, and John as well. So, and that is the best news for the important part of the season. Our start right now with, of course, the FA Cup we had, the Premier League and Champions League around the corner. It's important to have everyone.
Hi, Pep. Obviously, within a few days, we had two big announcements in football. First Klopp and then Xavi. And even though for different reasons, there is a debate about the energy levels demanded by football from managers, especially long seasons, long-term managers. Do you think that the structure of football at City, in a way, saves you a bit of energy to focus on football?
Yeah, we cannot compare the pressure we have in England and in Spain, from my experience.
Why?
It's 1,000 times higher and tougher there than here. Here is, for the managers, is a real place to be. Of course, a lot of games and 6 press conferences a week, and every 3 days game is a lot. But the pressure you feel in Barcelona is not comparable for another club.
Do you feel any sympathy towards Xavi?
Yeah, of course. I understand completely. completely.
Hi, Pep. Have you spoken to Xavi since he announced his news? No. I wonder, when you left Barcelona, you obviously took that sabbatical. I just wonder, why was that so important to you? And what did it do for you, that time away from the game in New York?
Well, it was good to be in the family, do something I've not done. But after 2 or 3 months, I signed a contract for Bayern Munich, so I didn't relax much, I expect. But yeah, it was good. So we take a decision, and yeah, it's a long time ago already. I forgot it, maybe my feelings in that moment.
And yet here, you've obviously been here longer than anywhere else. You spoke, I think last week, you joked about maybe extending your contract again. What is it about this place and this role that enables you to have that continued energy?
I said many times, I have everything what a manager could dream. I have everything. Hierarchy support me, and I have always... We changed a lot of players in 7 years, but all of them have been incredible, supportive, good environment. So I have everything. So still I feel good, and of course one day is going to finish, but I don't think about that right now.
Embargo? No? Okay, so the embargo for 10:30 this evening. Start with Martin down here.
All right, some more breaking news to bring you here on Transfer Talk. Crystal Palace, busy day for them. They are close to agreeing a deal with Blackburn to sign Adam Wharton. Negotiations have progressed and they are in the advanced stages of agreeing a deal. The player is actually believed to be travelling to London right now to prepare for a medical. You might remember we reported last week that Blackburn had rejected an £18 million offer from Palace for the midfielder, and the Blackburn boss, John Dahl-Tomasson, confirmed that the club had said no in one of his pre-match news conferences. But breaking news this lunchtime, Palace now close to agreeing a deal with the club to sign Wharton. Like I said, busy day at the club because they announced the signing of right-back Daniel Munoz this morning. Dan, let's just start with Adam Wharton then. Is this a good fit for Palace?
Certainly fits in with some of the recruitment that Dougie Friedman's done at Crystal Palace. If you think of some of the players that they've plucked from the EFL in Eze, in Elise, to an extent Gaye, even though he was bought from Chelsea, he'd played a lot in the EFL. So certainly that seems to have been the best avenue of recruitment for Crystal Palace over the last few years. If you speak to any EFL expert, they will tell you that Adam Wharton's the most exciting player in the Championship at the moment in terms of how he can grow and what levels his game can get to. He's a tenacious midfielder, very good at intricate passing, very good on the ball, but also really tenacious. Off it, there was a game live on Sky last season. I think it was his first game early on in the season, and straight away it just looked like he'd been playing in the Blackburn first team all his life. Still only a teenager as well, only 19. So in what's been a pretty gloomy season for Crystal Palace so far, this would be one that would excite me if I was a Crystal Palace fan. Yeah,
maybe a couple of players to be excited about, because we announced on Good Morning Transfers earlier, Daniel Munoz has joined the club.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like he's somebody who can make a real impact straight away. We spoke to Tim Vickery a few moments ago about him, 27 years of age. It feels like a really good piece of recruitment because he's a type of profile of defender in that right-back area, which Crystal Palace simply don't have at the moment. Joel Ward, 34, Nathaniel Klein, 32. More defensive fullbacks, but we can see Steve Parris said he possessed an impressive record going forward for a fullback, and the stats back that up really. 5 goals already this season, and crucially he's someone who can offer a real attacking threat in terms of creativity, service from crosses out wide. Look at that there, 26 crosses so far this season. So it's something that Crystal Palace simply don't have at the moment, and crucially he could fulfil an important role alongside Michael Elise on the right flank as well. So it could be somebody who fits in straight away, makes an impact. Wharton perhaps somebody more for the future, but Palace fans will be pleased to see their club doing some business.
Yeah. Now, I brought you some news from Scotland earlier on in the show. A little bit more transfer news from Scotland just reaching us, actually. And Owen Beck has actually rejoined Dundee for the rest of the season. You might remember he'd been recalled by Liverpool at the start of the month, went on to make his debut in the Premier League against Bournemouth. That was just last week, but he's now gone back to Dundee. So news just reaching us here from Scotland. Coming up on Transfer Talk, the very latest from Newcastle. Can they keep hold of Miguel Almiron? Welcome back to Transfer Talk. Now, with just 2 days to go until the window closes, Burnley have been linked to Montpellier centre-back Maxime Esteve, and Vincent Kompany wasn't denying the rumours this morning.
All I can say is he's not our player at the moment.
But obvious interest, the kind of quality that you want to bring in.
Yeah, I think we're past the point where I can deny that there's been interest, right? So you've got probably the best sources out there. But the point is, he's not our player, and until then, I can't say much more.
Roman S at Millwall as well. I mean, in terms of another attacking option, given the injuries you've got, I mean, is that again a player that you're looking at, or?
I know the player is a good player, but we haven't been active on that one, so I can be really honest.
Yes, good hearing and honest Vincent Kompany. I think it's clear they want some defensive reinforcements.
I think so, because they conceded 42 goals in the Premier League so far this season, 2 a game. Only Sheffield United have conceded more, 5 points adrift of safety. So they'll feel like they need to do something to give themselves a chance of staying up this season. They spent a lot of money last summer. They spent around £90 million bringing in a number of players, but Vincent Kompany's always quite keen to point out that a number of those players last season were on loan and left the club, so they had to bring in reinforcements. And it was quite interesting there. He said we're past the point where he can deny the fact they're interested in signing Esteve. They've already brought in David Datro Fofana from Chelsea. It'll be really intriguing to see how he gets on. And there'll be outgoings there as well. Because of the amount of players they've brought in, it's quite a bloated squad. So Connor Roberts and Manuel Benson, who was so brilliant in the Championship, hasn't really had a look in this season. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. There's not long to go now in the window. But also, I don't think they want to do anything that's at risk of affecting the long-term health of the football club. If they are to go down, I don't think they're going to try and break the bank and do anything that could affect them long-term. Interesting situation they're in. They've got a really tough game against Man City tomorrow, but they do need to start picking up points. And maybe if they bring in a defensive reinforcement, that will help. They're saying that Esteve is very young, and whether or not he can make a real impact between now and the end of the season, I'm not so sure.
Agree with what James was saying. And they also don't want to risk, like he said, what they've already got going on.
We see it really, really frequently now that teams will come up from the Championship, and because they've had to rely on loan players perhaps not fit for the Premier League coming to the end of their contracts. It's happening with Burnley now, it's happened with Forest, it happened with Villa as well. When they came up, the teams are kind of forced into having to bring in a lot of players. It looks like they're perhaps overactive in the market, but Vincent Kompany probably would say they didn't really have a choice. So it is difficult, and a trend that seems to happen every year. There seems to be a team that comes up that we're talking around this kind of issue.
Yeah. Right, if you didn't catch it on Good Morning Transfers, it is, by the way, deadline day over in the Saudi Pro League. So the big question, I suppose, regarding players in the Premier League is what does that mean for Miguel Almiron? And James, it feels like we've been talking a lot about this link with Al-Shabaab. I mean, kind of running out of time if he is to go.
Yeah, the window shuts at 9 p.m. tonight UK time, so it means that Miguel Almiron's future is likely to be decided in the next few hours, because we understand that Al-Shabaab are the only club that have really come in and had interest in him. So if he doesn't leave by 9 p.m. tonight, then unless interest comes in from across the world, then it's unlikely he moves on. But we know why there has been the interest in him. It does feel like Miguel Almiron is the most credible option for Newcastle to try and sell this window from a PSR point of view, because they're so tight when it comes to the constraints. Eddie Howe spoke yesterday, he said we're waiting to see what happens, but he also said crucially he wants to keep the squad intact, he wants to keep this team together. They've suffered so many injuries this season, they've really fallen off over the last few months, but he also understands and supports the decisions made by the club. If they were to sell a player like Miguel Almiron to try and fit within the PSR constraints, Newcastle are really keen to stay on the right side of the law, because we've seen what's happened with clubs breaching PSR. The rules really do have teeth, as we've seen with Everton. So he missed the game against Fulham with illness on Saturday. He may be back tonight. Newcastle taking on Aston Villa. So it looks like at this moment in time, with less than 9 hours left to go in the Saudi window, that Miguel Almiron will remain a Newcastle player.
Yeah, and James, talking about PSR there, look, if they are letting him go, does that mean they can then bring in reinforcements?
I think it would give them a little bit more flexibility. Eddie Howe said himself that, the only way they can bring anyone in is if someone leaves the building. So if Almiron leaves for 30 million, you think that might give them a bit of wiggle room, just by the virtue of if you buy a player, the fee is spread across the length of the contract. So if they spend 40 million on a player, it wouldn't be 40 million in PSR straight away. It would be spread over the length of the contract. They were linked with Jacob Ramsey yesterday from my team, Villa, which I thought
I own
Villa, obviously. I thought it was a really strange one, because Ramsey hasn't played all season. He's a very popular player at Villa. Unai Emery loves him, and Unai Emery said yesterday, I'm not thinking of letting him leave, even in case some teams are offering us a lot. Right now, I don't want that. I completely don't want that. His future now is with Aston Villa. So pretty adamant, Unai Emery, that Jacob Ramsey wouldn't be departing to Newcastle. But I think in an ideal world, if Almiron was to go, I think Eddie Howe would like to bolster his central midfield ranks because they've just had problems there all season with injuries and players missing, and they're down to the bare bones. Only 3 fit central midfielders in the FA Cup at the weekend. So if anyone else was to get lost, they haven't got enough to fill their midfield.
Yeah, Dan talking about central midfield, but who are their current winger options?
Yeah, they haven't actually got that many when you look at them. You can see on the screen when Harvey Barnes is one of them. He's closing in on a return from injury. But again, he's a left midfielder, really, when you think about it. The guy next to him, Anthony Gordon, again, has been absolutely brilliant, especially recently, and especially when Newcastle have had those injuries. He's really, really stepped up. But again, a winger that wants to play on the left. Now, Jacob Murphy, you can see there, he can play on the right. And even Tino Livramento was coming on and playing on the wing as well. I think Eddie Howe has just said that, you know, currently in the situation that Newcastle are in, he's being forced to play players that aren't natural wingers on the wing, and that's just the situation currently. So in a situation where they haven't actually got that many wingers, does it make sense to let their only real right winger go in Miguel Almiron? Because actually, when you look at those options, he is their right winger. And like Dan says, you know, it gives them a bit of flexibility, but are you getting rid of one right winger to bring in another one? Will Miguel Almiron do a job until the end of the season? But yeah, it doesn't obviously give them much time to really sort it out with the Saudi Pro League closing today and our deadline only a couple of days away.
Yeah, and just thinking about who they've been linked with in these sort of closing stages. I mean, Jacob Ramsey, that is the kind of big name this week, isn't it? Like you say, you don't think that's going to happen from what Eddie Howe said and also from what Unai Emery said as well. Yeah,
even from the players' perspective, you know, Villa have got more chance of being in the Champions League next season than Newcastle, as the league table dictates at the moment. And I just, with this pure profit stuff, Liv seeing it with Chelsea, it's a trend I really don't like, because the only players we're seeing linked with moves away are homegrown players, and that takes away from what football's all about, in my opinion.
But also, is Jacob Ramsey even a right winger? Like, where does he play across
he could play all across the midfield. Villa can't play with a box.
But so can, like, you know, all their professional footballers. You know, as a winger, you should be able to adapt and obviously have a predominant position, but a lot of them can play there. But Miguel Almiron is a right winger, you would say.
You wouldn't replace him like for like.
Exactly, and so you are then leaving another gap, effectively, if you're not going to sign another right winger. They're in the same... They've got the same problem, effectively.
Yeah. Just before we move on from talking about the Saudi deadline, want to talk a bit about Karim Benzema, because we know he's been pushing to leave Al Ittihad less than a year after sort of completing that big money move. What do we think will end up happening with him?
I think he'll probably end up staying in the Saudi Pro League. I think we all know what Karim Benzema brings, and even at 36, you know, Arsenal and Chelsea were the two teams that looked like they were maybe in for him or showed a little bit of interest. And actually, with the chances that both Arsenal and Chelsea have created this season and haven't finished, there's probably no doubt that if you stuck a 36-year-old Karim Benzema in those positions, he probably would actually score loads of goals. But again, it's the wages that are an issue, the money he's on over in Saudi, and with Chelsea's change to a wage structure that's sort of limits those, you know, huge wages a week. And Arsenal are the same, I think. So I just, especially with it closing tonight.
It would just be so cool to see him in the Premier League,
as much as I would love Karim Benzema at Chelsea, I just cannot see it happening.
Yeah, it would be very cool to see him in the Premier League. Right, we've got a couple of minutes left. Just before we go, I want to touch on Brentford, because yesterday it looked like Club Brugge's Antonio Nusa was on his way to West London, but a deal to sign him at the moment, that is stalling. There are complications with a medical, and now that has, in a way, sort of reopened the door to other clubs, the likes of Chelsea and Tottenham as well, who we told you earlier on in the window were interested in the player. James, just very quickly, tell us what has happened here. How has this played out in this way?
Yeah, well, this comes to us from Lyle Thomas from our news desk, and the update is we know Brentford agreed a £25 million deal in principle for him. The deal would have actually involved him staying in Belgium for the remainder of the season, but Brentford and Club Brugge are doing further due diligence on his fitness, and this move is now in jeopardy. Brentford detected potential issues in his medical and are now considering their options. So they remain hopeful they could still sign him, but they're unlikely to do so on those same terms there. So the door has now been reopened for the likes of Chelsea and Tottenham to explore it again. I think at this stage every option is on the table, and he's returned to Belgium now. There's a chance he remains a Bruges player, there's a chance he moves in this window, there's a chance he moves and stays in Bruges until the end of the season. So we wait to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, he's only 18. When you watch his highlight reel, you can see why he is so sought after and why he's being linked to clubs like, well, Chelsea, Spurs, Brentford as well, clubs in the Premier League.
Yeah, he looks electric, and this next move was going to be a really interesting one for him. Obviously, it seemed like last week Tottenham were the front runners, and then it's emerged this week that Brentford actually are in pole position. But there's obviously these discrepancies at the moment that need to get sorted out. He's a player who, you know, his team around him, it feels like it's a good team around him that want to make sure the next step he makes is the correct one. And I think that's why they chose Brentford. Brentford's recruitment over the years has been absolutely brilliant. It's just, we'll wait and see what happens with him.
Right, brilliant show, guys. Nice to have your company. For a full roundup of all the day's transfer news, catch the transfer show tonight, 5 o'clock, and then that earlier time of 6:30, by the way. Don't tune in at 7 for that, it's at 6:30. We are back at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Next, though, it is the Transfer Centre. We're going to hear from Maurizio Pochettino.